Oh yeah. Hello, and good time of day to all of you, my chess friends, here on the Internet Chess Club. Well, your favorite Russian schoolboy here, wearing red. Why? Well, obviously, candidates tournament begins tomorrow in Moscow.
Are you ready? Mario and
Oh
Sonic
man, I'm on
are
a
going
commercial.
for the gold.
Okay. Well, what another interesting addition to my usual routine is that I have to use these things because I have this terrible cough. Well, it's probably not gonna prevent me from coughing entirely because obviously speaking for prolonged periods of time is kind of irritating. But yeah, well, hopefully we're gonna have a good show. Hopefully. Now, the subject, of course, is the candidates. Now, this tournament that it's starting tomorrow and has 8 players, and you all know the names. I will go down the list just in case. 2 Americans, Nakamura and Caruana. 2 host players, Russians, Swidler and Karyakin. 2 veterans, former world champion Anand and his longtime adversary Topalov. So that's 6. And 2 more. The organizers nominee Levon Aronian and Anish Giri. Alright. What to say? Now, first thing I need to answer is a question. Am I gonna give Anand 0 chance again, like I did 2 years ago, before the Khanty-Mansiysk tournament? No, I'm gonna give him 5%. Well, you think it's like giving him 0? Well, yeah, look. It is hard, obviously. Well, what do we all know? I mean, it's a fan thing, right? I mean, you like the player and you want him to do well, and you think, okay, in this tournament, get it all together. You can explain bad results. You can even explain indifferent play. Okay, he's saving himself up for the candidates. He's saving up novelties. There's always this talk about saving up novelties. Yeah. Anyway, the reason I think this way, because I simply cannot believe that in this day and age, when chess progressed so much, and when I look back at the games from the early 1990s, I mean, they look dated. The openings look dated, and overall play. I mean, there are some parts, obviously, that they're always going to be there. You can always find good games, and not only from the 1990s, so from 1890s you can find good games. But the overall quality of chess literally made huge leaps forward. And I just can't believe, that the players that basically matured at that time in the 1990s, and I don't know if they hit their peak, maybe not. Maybe indeed it's possible to elevate your game or at least keep it on the same level. But I just can't believe, that Swidler, Anand or Topalov are going to win this tournament. No, so every and each of them gets 5%. 5%, am I hedging my bets? No, well, I just figured it's a little bit harsh to give them 0%. Things could happen. Now, next question. Why is that things could happen? Imagine if Magnus Carlsen got his wish, and his wish is spelled very directly. He doesn't want to sit there and wait for a world championship match. He wants to play in a tournament like this, and this tournament to be a world championship, or a knockout tournament, or whatever. He just doesn't think it's fun to play the same guy in a 12 or 16 game match or whatever they do. He didn't want to do this, that's why he didn't show up in Kazan what, 2011 it was. He probably would have been a favorite to win, and then they still played matches. Gelfand emerged the winner, and he ended up playing Anand. Okay, big question. Can we watch the candidates' games live on the ICC? I don't know, asking the wrong person. Well, I've heard rumors that certain characters are trying to kind of restrict, access to the games only to the official website. I don't know, however, if we should take those guys seriously. I would say they're just clowns. In my opinion, as soon as a chess player makes a move on the board, it becomes public domain. I know 100% that there is no stipulation in the contract that the chess players give rights for their moves to the organizers. Well, if I still were a chess player, I would never agree to this. Not for $1 million. No, this is totally wrong. Chess, as any activity, human endeavor, it needs to feed itself, and the feedback comes from the fans. And if you isolate these guys from the fans, then it's counterproductive, clearly counterproductive. What I think would be the most interesting openings we might see. Okay, let's get started. I want to show you some games, obviously. Now, what I decided to do for this, but I first have to finish that thought that I didn't have a chance to finish. There is no Magnus Carlsen, right? There is no clear favorite in this tournament. Look, when truly great players were coming up and going through the ranks and on their path to the World Championship, I give you some names: Tal, Fischer, Karpov, Kasparov, Carlsen. Well, they appear to be like unstoppable force. Yeah, they sometimes would lose a game, but clearly they came as favorites. Maybe in case of Karpov it wasn't really that obvious because Karpov, when he played in this candidates matches in 1974, in my opinion, he was already a favorite back then. I remember, I was a young player, but I was already a chess player, and I thought that Karpov was going to beat all these old guys, including Spassky, which he did very convincingly. Maybe there were some questions about this, but usually it's kind of obvious, right? You see this young guy who plays so well and beats everybody, and you see that this guy is going to become a world champion. Now, can you name a guy from this tournament? Maybe the big thing is that we think whoever qualifies is still not going to have a 50% chance to beat Carlsen, which is true. All right, then what? Well, they still believe, every and each of them, that they can win this tournament and they can give Carlsen a good fight. But they should realize that none of the 8 people is the strongest player in the tournament. So in order to win this tournament, they can't just be yourself and play your game. It means nothing, it's just empty phrase. Well, they have to play smart, and they have to choose their opening certain way, prepare for particular opponent certain way. Now, I cannot possibly go over all the possible matchups, right? Because they all play all. So I took a liberty of kind of grouping people in pairs for whatever reasons. So I start with 2 Russian guys. Now, what makes Svidler and Karyakin separate from the rest of the group is that they didn't play in Grand Chess Tour last year. They were actually shut out of these big tournaments because the only big tournaments were the 3 events: Norway, Sinquefield, and London Classic. And they all had the same field. Now, the other 6 players, they played there, right? Aronian, Giri, Caruana, Nakamura, Topalov, and Anand. Okay, so we'll talk about these guys later, but what about these 2 Russians? Well, they actually I don't know, actually probably not the right word. Arguably, they achieved the best result because they played in the World Cup. And they finished ahead of many participants of this tournament in this knockout World Cup. I know different system, I know short matches and tie breaks, but nonetheless, this is how both Karyakin and Svidler were able to qualify for this tournament. Okay, so let's see how they played each other. Now, I'm going to be particularly paying attention not to strong sides. Well, they all have great strong sides. But I want to pay attention to their weaknesses, because clearly, that every player in the field has a weakness, or maybe more than one. And the task now for the players of this tournament is to somehow steer the game to the area where they're stronger than the opponent, or where the opponent is uncomfortable. Alright, let's see how Svidler did it against Karyakin there. Peter Svidler, classically educated chess player, e4 player in the early stage of his career, then a lot of d4. And then, this is the opening game of their final match. This is very important. Of course, they both qualified for the candidates now, but winning the World Cup is a great accomplishment. There was a lot of money at stake. For the opening game of this 4-game match, Svidler chooses the King's Indian attack. Interesting, right? Hang on a second, I need to open my analysis of this whole thing so I can tell you exactly what's going on. Okay, there they go. Standard position of this. And now it's interesting. E takes d5. Well, from the classical game between Fischer and the Mongolian Grandmaster Magmar Suren, we remember that how it goes with e5, knight d7, knight f1, then the h-pawn goes forward. All that, and all to h5, then to h6. The knight comes to g4, via h2. Yeah. Of course. Well, Karyakin faced it, and apparently Karyakin doesn't mind playing against it. Svidler took a very interesting decision, capturing on d5, which was never the main move in this position. Why I think this decision was good for a particular game? Well, the resulting structure is like the King's Indian, covers reversed. Not that semi-open King's Indian, when black takes on d4 with his pawn from e5. Now, not every player can handle it very well. There is something in that position, and here there are particular things also. Maybe the pawn went on b5 a little too soon. I don't know. So maybe that, but anyways, as the game progressed, it became clear that Svidler made a very nice choice. Now, from Karyakin's point of view, there are a lot of good things said about Karyakin, because we know ultimately, of course, that he won that World Cup, showing incredible resilience and ability to come back. He was down 2-0 in a 4-game match, with Svidler, and yet he was able to equalize the score and then take the match to the tie breaks, rapid games, and over there finally they played 10 games. It was an amazing match, of course. Well, Karyakin has some other good qualities. He's able to... He's brought up as an e4 player. He's able to attack when the opportunity arises. He also developed into a very good technical player. We remember Karyakin's success in the previous candidates tournament when he came back from the dead last place. In the second half of the tournament, he was the best player. While Anand was kind of coasting, well, they made it very difficult and came very close to beating Anand in the head-to-head encounter in the penultimate round, what would make it even tighter. But why isn't Karyakin world champion? Why isn't Karyakin obvious number 2? Why is his rating is only 2761? There is a thing about Sergei's play that's been noticed quite a long time ago, and I think it's been exploited by some of his opponents, is that he has a tendency to play passively in unfamiliar positions. He kind of drifts. And his sense of danger is not that finely developed. So he kind of wakes up when the situation is already pretty bad. He actually defends better in positions where he realizes that he's worse. And then he becomes tenacious defender. But sometimes it takes him too long a time to figure out that things already went wrong for him. And that's what Svidler wanted, exactly this kind of position where opponent is not familiar. So I think we're going to see quite a bit of openings like this, answering your question, Nihil, that's been sitting there for a long time. I think we're going to see a lot of King's Indian attack, a lot of reti, a lot of whatever. Because players will use their particular preparation against particular opponent and will try to find this soft spot over there. I will show you what happened in the game. First of all, for a d4 player who's sort of familiar with this pawn structure, because you get it often, when you have white, most likely your pawn already would be on e5. That's understandable. I'm trying to put some arrows here, and then I'm not able. Okay, anyway. But to play the b pawn forward, it helps white, obviously. Maybe he had to sit tough, and just play necessary moves. h6 is very important to take away g5. Excuse me. And after b4, white played this nice move, the weakness on c5, forced black to preserve the bishop on e7, to have this protection. Of course, the bishop on all the way to c5. Now f6. f6 may seem to be part of a plan. And it probably seemed totally okay to Karyakin, but there is one problem there. His light square bishop is misplaced. Excuse me. Oh, it's going to be tough. This bishop really belongs to e6, not to b7. Oh, terrible. Just came back from the doctor, but I guess I'm going to be struggling today. Oh, even my eyes get watery when I cough this much. So the bishop in the wrong place on b7. Yeah. And now rook f7. But I mean, this kind of move, it just feels wrong, right? Well, black wasn't defending against anything in particular. This is where Sergei's biggest weakness is. He tends to play passively when he doesn't know what to do. Oh, things became terrible after d4. Great shot from Svidler. It's a temporary pawn sacrifice, but look at this. Now, all sorts of problems. Kind of a pin on the diagonal a2 to g8, all the way on the king. An attack against b7. Everything is disorganized. Now the bishop is pinned. Well, that's what happens when you disconnect the rooks. And in a few moves, white's advantage became decisive. Rook b1 was great. Now, we give credit to Peter. Well, this is exactly the area of the game where he excels. He has a very fine knows for the initiative. Well, he absolutely not affected by material on the board. I guess being a career Greenfield player will make you like this. So he ignores the d4 pawn and just keeps the pressure on and looking to play knight c5 maybe. Yeah, that's what happened. Unpins, but there are more problems. Very skillful use of the bishop pair. Alright. I don't know if we should go for the rest of the game. Svidwar won it quite convincingly. Oh, actually, there are only a few moves left. Pins all over. The knight still cannot move because the bishop on b7 is not sufficiently protected. So he tried a tactic that wasn't meant to be. Well, the thing is that in reply to this move, white doesn't even have to let black to take the rook on b7. Much stronger is this check, forcing the rook to come back, then you trade rooks, and then you recapture the queen, and well, guess what, you're two bishops ahead. Yeah, the grab, I don't know. Well, it's a little bit extreme, not sure about the grab, but reversed cover openings will be very common. By the reverse cover openings, I mean when white is trying to play like black, maybe with extra tempo. Like playing knight f3, g3 and trying to get like a reverse King's Indian, which is called the King's Indian attack, as we saw in this game. Or maybe reverse Grunfeld, which could transpose into the Catalan. I think there's going to be a lot of flexibility shown in opening play. I don't think that some of the more experienced players in this tournament, Anand for example, when they went through a period in their career when they were one of the best experts, if not the best, in modern, at that time, long theoretical variations. If you remember how Anand beat Kramnik, so he worked out this great line for black in the Miran variation. And Anand was always pretty strong with the Sicilian. But times are different now. Well, there's no longer Kasparov who tells everybody, you gotta play like I do, otherwise you have no chance. No, Carlsen obviously refused to do this, and now Carlsen is a world champion, and probably no less a world champion than Kasparov was. Okay. Maybe we need to look at some of the games between Anand and Topalov, just to get an idea about these two guys. Now, Topalov, obviously, and Anand, they both grew up when the Sicilian was the main opening, right? They both, particularly Anand, made the switch to e5, but yet they both remain faithful to the Najdorf variation. The Najdorf, I would say that the Najdorf has survived. But what characterizes the Najdorf variation is not just its opening moves. What characterizes it is that black playing the pawn to e5. Now, the old Kasparov's favorite Scheveningen formations with the pawn only on e6. Well, I don't know if refuted is the right word, but they just fell out of fashion because white simply found how to play against it. Well, for some players, probably it wasn't a big deal, because among the Najdorf players, there were players of classical Najdorf mode, like Fischer. So would always play e5, right? Except dealing with bishop g5 or bishop c4. But some players like Kasparov himself and Topalov is among them. They simply viewed the Najdorf move order is the best way to get to their favorite Scheveningen variation, with the pawns like this, while avoiding the Keres attack with the immediate move g4. So in this game, which... okay, let me look it up. Hang on. Yeah, that's from the previous candidates in the Khantin Malsis, 2014. So Topalov goes for it. But the problem with the structure is rather not one particular variation. It's just a general shift in the way we look at these positions. White no longer is trying to necessarily checkmate black. Well, White knows that he has a solid position if they keep the e4 pawn safely protected, which most of the time accomplished in the English attack where the pawn goes to f3. But this h3 system that Anand used for this game also offers White pretty solid protection of the e4 pawn. I can reply to b5, they do this. Yeah, there is this line. You go forward, you think you're gonna win a pawn. There is a sacrifice. Pretty tough to play against this one. So Topalov didn't play b5, so he goes knight d7. And I gotta tell you, like Topalov is not gonna be successful playing like this. Well, this is not cutting-edge theory anymore. He admitted in some of his interviews during the Grand Chess Tour that he doesn't work on chess nearly as much as he used to. He's a family man now. And understandable. Maybe it's the right decision because he's just unable to give that much of time and energy to opening preparation. It would probably not help his results. So he decided to sort of play on old baggage, which is not so bad because he was one of the best players in the world as far as the opening preparation went. But a lot of his stuff became kind of obsolete. Now, there is still good attitude and a tendency to value the initiative and risk take and all that. It's still present in Vasilin. But you gotta get the kind of position that gives you a chance to do this. When he was winning this tournament in St. Louis, he played brilliant concepts, positional sacrifices, whatnot. But it was all based on great opening preparation. He was putting himself in position to do this. And I believe that already 2 years ago, I'm looking at this game. Alright, it's a little bit delayed. Now, the h-pawn took 2 moves to come to h4, but the nature of the position didn't change. And importantly, Anand is one of the best players to play against the Sicilian. He he learned to do this when it was the main opening, and then caught the tail end of the popularity of the Sicilian and scored extremely well. And in this game, he just plays these moves, so easily. Like the less experienced player would think, I'm playing b3, weakening my knight. But the pawn on e4 is protected and it takes away the c4 square. Eventually, the black knight is going to be forced back. And already on move 13, f5. Vasilin's problem also is that he absolutely hates defending passively. But certain positions when he's worse, they simply cannot expect to muscle his way through by opening up and starting tactical play, because his opponents are as skillful in tactical play as he is. And it only will speed up his demise, demise of his position. That's what happened in this game. It didn't really speed it up, it went 57 moves. But Anand, he understands everything. Giving up the dark square bishop, he doesn't mind anymore because of this huge weakness of the pawn on e6. Black simply cannot solve his problems, and the pawn on g5 is essentially important. It prevents the black bishop from coming out to f6. And well, Anand probably could have tried something sharper. Well, he's still, good enough, obviously, to keep his advantage. And here he has a more of a French structure they have on the board. Clear advantage of the dark squares and play against the e6 pawn, and they kept it all the way through and won this game. Alright. So Topalov, in my opinion, his biggest weakness, is his repertoire, particularly with the black pieces. Well, things went his way in the first tournament of the Grand Chess Tour. Well, obviously, when you win a game on time forfeit and a lost position against a world champion, it gives you some kind of boost, right? And it did. But he kind of faded away and then was really a non-factor in the overall count competition of the Grand Chess Tour points. Looked a little overmatched, honestly. And there were no other tournaments, no other results that would make me think otherwise. Okay. Anand, on the other hand. I know it's an old game, and that's Topalov Anand, right? It's from 2008, I believe. Okay, let me look it up. Yeah. So at that time, Topalov is cutting edge, right? So he plays this pawn sacrifice. One of the first people who played. Now, of course, it's common knowledge, but a game from 2008. Important is to look at Anand's reaction, and well, trust me, it did not improve. It only gotten worse in the next 8 years. When Anand is taken out of his comfort zone, when either the tournament situation is very important for him. Well, we can remember all how uncomfortable Anand looked when he played the first match with Magnus Carlsen. The second match, he obviously was not expected even to be there, right? So he approached it as a bonus. So I got a chance to play this guy again. And he played significantly better. So for Anand, it's very important to be in a comfortable tournament position. When he's not, lately, and that tendency I think established many years ago, he kind of folds. He just doesn't show mental toughness, and like this game is a prime example. Alright, this position. Well, you can say, well, it's not going to happen now because now Vishy is going to play knight c6. Yeah, knight c6 is the theoretical move now. By that time, I don't know if it was known or not. But there are going to be some other variations similar to this. Anand is going to face a situation like this where he's not prepared theoretically. Maybe he never looked at that. Maybe he doesn't remember. And then he has to fight over the board. And he didn't fight very successfully in this game. He went queen c8. The very direct strategy from white. Just hitting that pawn on d5. If he wins it back, he's actually going to have a better game because of the strong white square bishop. So Anand decides to part with the bishop pair. I noticed another thing in Anand's chess. It was visible even in the Gelfand match, which was quite a long time ago. There is a lot of simplifications that Anand uses. Well, he simplifies to drawn positions if he feels that he has no advantage. But he also simplifies from somewhat worse positions to worser situations, if I could use this. Worse and worse. Trading bishops for knights. Well, I still remember how against Gelfand he took that In a sort of a standard Rubinstein Nims Karpov variation with hanging pawns that Gelfand tried. How Anand gave up his other bishop and gave Gelfand 2 bishops versus 2 knights. Gelfand wasn't able to win that game. Very similar here, but Topalov have to castle, rook d1. White's advantage is much better than it seems. Now, one thing I don't want to accuse Anand of is not understanding. He probably understands chess better than he plays now. What I mean by that, that sometimes he makes decisions even if he knows that they're inadequate. Simply because he just cannot take this anymore. When his wars and the position is too tactically charged, often he just tries to bail out, but that helps the opponent because the advantage clarifies and it becomes extremely easy for the opponent to finish the game. Like in this case. Alright. How can Black possibly save himself in this position? Well, he needs to somehow get his queen off the back rank and connect the rooks and try to trade his rook for the rook on d7. You can't just let this rook sit on the 7th rank. From that point of view, this was the only move to consider. Not because you want to go knight c5. No, your knight should stay on e6. Because you want to go queen c5. And then possibly rook d8. Oh, well, he hesitates. What a terrible move queen a8 was. Now it's too late. When the knight comes to c5, now he tried a tactical move, and that's the last move in the game. Anand resigned. 25 moves. Into the game, probably the right idea, because when this happens, White has a simple tactical shot, and then he picks off that rook. Alright, so about Anand. So we saw him playing well in Norway tournament. He didn't, but it was some kind of a throwback tournament. And Topalov won it, and Anand and Topalov, they played in the last round, and Anand didn't try to win this game. Sort of agreed to a draw very quickly and gave Topalov first place in the tournament. People thought, no, well, Anand is satisfied with second place and he gets a lot of Grand Chess Tour points and this is a good strategic move. Strategic move came out to nothing because, well, neither one of them was a factor in the next 2 tournaments. Yeah, Anand played poorly, but then he had a good tournament in Zurich. That's the last time we saw him play. He went to play at Gibraltar, that open tournament with strong field, lost a bunch of rating points and didn't play very well, to be honest. Although I liked how he fought till the end and was able to win, I think, his last round game, salvaging whatever was left to salvage. But particularly in Zurich, that's a different story. So now you have a different event, combination of new Rapid, which is a 40-minute per game, and then Blitz, and he was comfortable in this and played well throughout the whole event. Still, well, a result in this exhibition event, well, cannot erase the bad results and the rating points lost throughout the second half of 2015. So Anand gets 5%. So does Topalov. Hey! Yeah, I've been talking about these guys already. For quite some time. No, Svidler and Karyakin, I didn't give odds on this guy. Svidler cannot get more than 5% in my opinion too. Problem with Peter Svidler is the nerves. No, he's very bright, very intelligent. but he's also kind of high-strung. You see him when he plays, he can't sit at the board. He plays a move, he has to get up and start pacing somewhere. I know he's thinking of his game, of course. It's not like he's looking for distraction, but I mean, when you're down to maybe 10 or 15 minutes and Svidler started playing considerably slower, as everybody does. He didn't know what time travel was like when he was a young player, but now he does. Yet, even when he has like 10 minutes to play last 15 moves, he would still get up after every move. That's nerves. A lot was said about Svidler's mental collapses, some premature resignations, and I can show you this game. It's one of the rapid games with Karyakin from that final match. Peter is at his best when he kind of knows what he wants, when he's determined and he did some kind of mental preparation for the game. Like he had against Magnus Carlsen in the last round of the London Candidates Tournament. Here he's white and he... hang on a second. I need to find this game to see simply to find out what game number it was in their match. Hang on. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't during the tiebreak. So a draw would be, I don't know, I don't think the draw would win the match for Svidler again. Kind of not sure. But anyway, the inconsistency here. Alright, so if you want to make a draw in this position, alright, you play your pawn to c5. Oh, break up the center, two central files open. And two bishops are hardly very important because white has very easy development. Likely things are going to get traded quickly. Now this, and then the beginning of some uncertainty here. Stops b5, but at the cost, obviously, of creating this frigid pawn structure with the weakness on b3. It was too early. Already in this position, white is quite uncomfortable. So he didn't manage to complete his setup for Maroczy bind and the pawn on f3, because now the black knight is coming to e5 and hits this pawn, and or to c5. There are various problems there. When Peter gets in the worst position, he is somewhat similar to Topalov. He's trying to sharpen the game up. Well, he's not your Karyakin or Kamsky type, who just defend grimly. And Nakamura, by the way, too. In this department, probably Nakamura is the best player in the world. His ability, not to get discouraged and play somewhat worse positions. Well, Svidler is not like this, and then everything in this game shows that he kind of just didn't want to play passively, but missed knight b6. No, you're probably always gonna miss things, and now black has twin threats. Not only he's planning to take on a4, he can take on c4 and then step the bishop back and win the knight on c3. Already black is better, and the game absolutely goes downhill for Peter Svidler. He lost the a4 pawn and quickly lost another pawn and lost the game. So, old guys, 5% each. Okay, let's go to the favorites. Okay, what do we have here? Nakamura versus Caruana. Okay, let's talk about these guys. There's a lot of unfinished business between them. And I don't know if it's going to be completely sorted out in this tournament. Well, I believe not. Even if one of these guys wins the tournament and gets to play Magnus Carlsen, well, I think the other guy would think, no, it should have been me. Well, when Caruana completed his move to represent the United States again, I mean, he still, as far as I know, has not taken residence in the country in proper way. Yeah, it will generate good US media coverage, of course. So, Caruana versus Carlsen, epic battle for the title. Yes, I gotta give this to Caruana. Of all the players, and I particularly say all the players, because we need to talk about Anish Giri in this department, but of the players who competed with Carlsen so many times, and well, they got hit, they suffered tough losses, and then they got up, and then they tried again, and they hurt the champion quite a few times. Well, think of Joe Frazier, like fighting Muhammad Ali. If Magnus Carlsen is Muhammad Ali, then we have Joe Frazier, Fabiano Caruana. He'll punch him hard. He may even knock him down. Is he good enough to ultimately win? Unfortunately, there are problems. There are holes in Caruana's game. Now, one of them is the time management. There was just inordinate amount of occasions when Caruana allowed himself to get real low on time. Now, the book on him was that Caruana kind of loses his way in time trouble, and he's not really so good in rapid and blitz. Now, well, particularly Nakamura thought this way, but when they had the St. Louis challenge, you know what happened. Caruana won convincingly in both rapid and blitz parts. On the board, Caruana's serious problem, I believe, is that he is kind of unsure of himself if he plays for a win or he plays for a draw. He likes to play for a win, which is a great quality, but oftentimes, when he just needs to make a tough decision and say, okay, I'm going to finish this game with a draw, like Giri would say, okay, this is going to be a draw, and then we play tomorrow. And he kind of drifts. I mean, look at this position, okay, Nakamura white, Caruana black. I mean, how can you imagine black losing this game? Or white losing this game? Nobody should lose this game. It's a draw. It's a rook endgame with equal number of pawns. I mean, how is that possible? And that's not from something. It's from Norway chess. It's a Grand Chess Tour game. I can't even explain b5. Like, what does b5 do? You open the b file for what? For your king? It's ridiculous. You make your a pawn weak. You allow the white rook to nicely operate there, hitting a5 or c5, maybe coming up on the fourth rank. b3. Clearly, the position somewhat shifted in white's favor. You'll get to Giri. And now the next one is g5. Now, you can hold a lot of positions in rook endgames with weak pawns, because, the rooks, they're not really kind of pieces that perch somewhere like knights do, and on this square they cannot be chased away from and put pressure on some pawns and just sit there for a long time. The rook has to be active. Well, I cannot imagine white making any progress in this position unless he somehow opens the game and gets him with his rook, into black's camp. Who would play g5 here? I don't know. I just don't get it. It opens a file for white. Literally, in a matter of few moves. And now, alright, how are we going to hold this? It's probably still possible. You need to keep your rook on d6. Now, the pawn has to go to f6. So put the pawn over there immediately. he will attack. You protect from d6. He will go over there. Yeah, he will try this check and then bring the king up. But you also have this pressure against d3. The f5 pawn is untouchable, cannot be attacked. Well, it's a difficult position, it's a worse position, but maybe you can still hold it. Caruana continues his slide. It's a ridiculous move, Rook a7. Every move was bad. Tries to bail out with this, but Nakamura, of course, is not going to mess up his pawns. He knows he can win the f4 pawn anyway, which he does, and just very simply converts his advantage, wins the game. Now, Caruana simply cannot afford losing games like this in this tournament. He can't. Yes, he's good. He was able to start a second Silver Cup with 7 wins. It's not going to happen in Moscow. Sorry, I have to get one more of this. It'll help with the cough. What? Boy. Well, you can't do this, you can't say, I played this because I wanted to do something. No, you have to keep your emotions in check. None of these guys, as I said before, is head and shoulders above everyone else. Maybe Bobby Fischer could afford to be himself, like Kasparov. Kasparov was this, when he went through these candidates matches. Yeah, he suffered a kind of surprising loss with White in the first game against Korchnoi, but then it was just one game. He recovered. Continued playing his own chess and beat everybody. Korchnoi, Smyslov, and Belyavsky before that. Went to play Karpov. Finally met his match, where his loosey-goosey ways caused him to lose first 4 games out of first 9. Then he almost lost that match. He basically recovered on the fly, like during the first match. Was aided with this unlimited to 6 wins kind of thing. Otherwise, he would have to climb this thing back again. Even Kasparov. But Kasparov was the best player, not counting Karpov. Is Caruana the best player in the world, not counting Carlsen? We can't say this. So Caruana absolutely has to cut that stuff out, There is no room for this, for unnecessary losses like that. Now, about Nakamura. Now, a lot of people, we simply love Hikaru. Hikaru is the kind of guy, who hangs out, like, I don't know, talks to us, sometimes plays Blitz online. No, he's a legend already of American chess. He's done so much since winning the US Championship at the age of 17. He has a lot of supporters. Now, Hikaru matured a lot as a chess player. No more wild e4, c5, queen h5 stuff. Now, he at least claims to be a universal player, able to play any position. He prepares particularly against every particular opponent, which is a very big part in this tournament. Hikaru's weak spot is just sometimes he gets overconfident. Another game where he faced Caruana. That's from their showdown in St. Louis. Rapid game, well, you can say, it was an exhibition match. Not quite. Bragging rights. Nakamura bragged, that, okay, well, we got a great board too on our Olympic team. Well, Caruana may have a different opinion. Caruana probably thinks he's no inferior to Nakamura, and particularly he welcomed the chance to prove himself in Nakamura's territory, be it rapid and blitz. Well, in this position, the most common move is bishop g4, right? Yeah, there is some theory here. White gets his wish, he just messes up this pawns over there. But the pin is unknown, so that's the purpose of bishop g4, and the position is not completely closed, and there's something for black to do. So maybe white will not have all the time he needs to attack the c-pawns. Capture is playable. Now we absolutely have to play queen d5. It's a double attack, right? It chases the knight away. Then this. Okay, white goes to the endgame. Or whatever the pawn see to. No. Well, anyway, this makes sense. This doesn't make any sense. You can play like this in bullet, but okay, this is not bullet. Well, maybe just some healthy dose of contempt for your opposition is necessary to be a chess player. They even put this thing into computers, right? But how far can you take it? To play this kind of over-the-board inspiration, it's kind of, I don't know, it's not even disrespectful toward Caruana. It's just disrespectful toward chess. Drops a pawn in the exchange. Doesn't seem like white is bothered by any threats against his queen. The queen actually looks active on h7. That's exactly how it is. In the few moves, Caruana lined up his pieces very nicely. Great knight maneuver. Came to g5. And it's basically resignable already. The knight is coming to e6. Alright, I admit, it's extremely unlikely that Hikaru would have a game like this. Particularly in the early going. Now, Hikaru, if I'm not mistaken, is starting the tournament with 3 white games out of first 4 rounds. He absolutely needs to get some positive score out of this. I believe if Hikaru is not in the lead or somewhere near the leading position by midpoint of the tournament, then things like this may start happening. A lot of pressure on Hikaru, particularly with the World Championship match being set for the United States. Alright, that leaves us with the odd couple, right? How come I kind of paired, Anish Giri and Levon Aronian? I mean, it's just complete opposite, right? Aronian is this kind of refined intellectual and very well read, artistic kind of person, Giri, on the other hand, is a little bit cold, somewhat less approachable and calculating type. Well, Giri is significantly younger than Aronian. By what? By 10 years? What I find in common in these two guys, well, they have, sorry to say, they have problems with basic endgame play. I don't know, there's just things are not really there, the things that say, I don't know, Kramnik had. Well, I don't know, the way they played this rook endgame, it's just comedy of errors. And I don't know if I should go through this necessarily. I talked about this already. This is a game from the recent Zurich tournament. Yeah, it's a blitz game, but this is where it is. They're both great players, and they believe that they can figure things out at the board, and they don't need to study endgame theory, because if I get there, I'll know where it is. Given time. Yeah, that's the key. Given time. What if there is no time? Well, when a move like King G6 is played, I mean, I can't really write it off, like, okay, this is blitz kind of move. I see absolutely no reason for the Black King to separate itself from a passed pawn. I see no reason at all for Black not to play King G6. This is how he gets in trouble. And then Giri just casually, just lets him off the hook. In the position where the most obvious plan for him would be to bring the king over, and eventually, because the rook is nicely anchored there on f4, it's protected itself, it defends f2, defends a4. I have pretty good analysis of this endgame, and now maybe I'm making too much out of this, but this is not the first time. This is not the first time I saw it. Now with Giri, I mean, Aronian has sort of an excuse because he's this artistic type, and it's just too boring for him, and he'll make up for it by some inspiration. But Giri is a technical player. He's supposed to be merciless in positions like this. He's supposed to have this ironclad, like endgame technique. He's not showing it. Now, for Giri it's particularly important because the way he plays is probably not going to get chances to win very many games. He can still win the tournament. And I give Giri some 15% chance of doing this, winning the tournament. His chances, in my opinion, are less than Caruana's and Nakamura's, but he's like in the second group of favorites. Look, this reminds me like, okay, anyway, a Republican race, but they don't even have a Donald Trump in this tournament, right? Nobody is anywhere near, being like a 40% favorite to win this tournament. Caruana and Nakamura maybe 30% each. But Giri absolutely have to play error-free game when he gets a chance to convert technical positions. And he's a very good endgame player. It's just this particular territory where he has to do a little bit more than play like on general grounds. His favorite positional moves. When he has to come up with actual knowledge of typical endgame positions and precise calculation, this is where he comes short. Now, a lot has been said about Giri's so-called great personal score against Magnus Carlsen. I don't think it's great. So he won one game, and it was already 5 years ago, I don't know, 6 years ago. Kinda caught Carlsen unawares. Ever since, Giri has been kinda on the run. He had a lot of games with white. Most of them were uneventful draws. He showed some good preparation and was able to hold Carlsen a few times where he had the black pieces. But I mean, those were not games, in my opinion. I would say of all players in this tournament, the best head-to-head matchup against Carlsen, obviously, it's Caruana. He won so many games, and maybe he lost more than he won, but it's pretty close. Now, about Aronian. They say that a player who got invited to the tournament lost. Indeed, Aronian did not qualify. Giri got there by rating, so did Topalov, and not by virtue of being in the World Championship match. Caruana and Nakamura, they did it in this tough, grueling series of Grand Prix tournaments. And Svidor and Karyakin, well, they did it at the World Cup. Now, Aronian just got in there because some Armenian businessman put up significant chunk of money toward the prize fund in this tournament and said, I want to see my favorite Levonchik in the tournament. Now, the decision of the Russian Chess Federation to go along with that is not very well received by a lot of people. They think that it had to be Kramnik. Well, Kramnik happens to be higher rated also. although the difference is not that big. Anyway, Aronian is there, and Aronian cannot make any tournament worse. To win one game, I can't argue with the score that Gary has, but still, there wasn't enough really contested games between Gary and Carlsen. Every time it just wasn't. It didn't get there yet. So about Aronian, the bad thing about Aronian that there is this pattern, right? 3 times he came to this candidate cycle. First with the matches in Kazan, then to 2 tournaments, London and Khanty-Mansiysk, being one of the favorites. If not a hands-down favorite, how he was, in the absence of Magnus Carlsen. Well, it showed the same pattern. So as soon as the pressure comes, that he just collapses. Collapse in the second half of the both candidates tournaments. Now, they say there is no pressure on him now. Why isn't there? Well, he got invited in this tournament by some good stroke of luck. So somehow I can't give Aronian many chances. I would give him more chances. I would give him 10%. All right, so let's count. 3 old guys, Svidler, Topalov, and Anand, they get 5% each. Altogether, it's 15. Now we have Levon Aronian, I give him 10. 25. Anish Giri gets another 15. So that's 40. Yeah. I'll rank Karyakin's chances higher than many people would. I'll give him a lot. I'll give him 20%. Well, first of all, he's shown that he can win when it counts. Those things, they don't happen by accident. What he did at the World Cup, it's sign of things to come. So many times he came back and won when it counted. It tells you something. Also, in Karyakin's favor speaks the way he was able to handle the situation in the second half of the Khanty-Mansiysk tournament. He was the only player who kept his head straight. Anand too, but Anand was just trying to coast to the finish line. He played great in the second half, and so that has to be a plus. Another thing I'll mention, that he single-handedly defeated the entire Chinese Olympic team, Olympic and world champions, in some matches, Russia versus China. There are a lot of things that speak in Karyakin's favor. So I would give him 20%, although we talk about some holes in his game. Alright, so that brings us to what? And it takes care of the half of it, right? That's 50% combined. And the other, Nakamura and Caruana, 50-50, 25% each. Not really impressive. I think we're going to need a brokered convention, right? If the top guy, 2 top guys, only get 25% chance of winning in my book, that's not a whole lot. As I said, not only there is no Magnus Carlsen in this tournament, there is no Donald Trump in this race. Alright, guys. That's all I had to say, and I'm glad you were here with me, and you probably saw these games before, and mainly this whole thing was talk, but I mean, if you care to offer your opinion, I mean, I can stick around for 5 more minutes if you guys will type and tell me who your favorites are. Yeah, let's finish with the chess games. The real chess games begin tomorrow. Alright, tell me. Is there anyone who believes that there is a player in this tournament who has 50% or more chance of winning the tournament? Then speak up, and name the player. Trump is a bad chess player, you know, I can guarantee that, yeah. Anyway, Ears, before you go, tell me, who's your favorite in this tournament? I'm not gonna let you go. You gotta tell me. Nobody believes that there is a guy with 50% or more chance to win. Okay, 40% would be Trump territory. Okay, Giri will win this thing. Alright, Anish Giri wins this whole thing. Fantastic. Then he plays Magnus Carlsen, and we'll see if Magnus Carlsen can win a game against Giri. Alright, Nakamura. We believe in Nakamura. In Nakamura we trust. Alright, the long wait is gonna be over beginning tomorrow. Alright, guys, so hopefully I'll get a chance to be there with you working on some live games. Ears, you gotta tell us. Nakamura, you did. Alright, guys, thank you, bye-bye.